Hello, everyone. This is John Peter Koelsch II, and I am going over the National Trust for Historic Preservation as part of the Module 3, um, 6 reasons for preserving historical buildings. And um, the first one over here is the old buildings have intrinsic value. Well, they have architectural features. Over on the right, we have the Point of Honor in Lynchburg, and we have um, Thomas Jefferson's Poplar Forest. As you can see, they're very, very similar. However, they're slightly different. Um, Poplar Forest influenced the Point of Honor. Uh, we see the round, uh, not round, but octagonal features of Poplar Forest. And if we look inside Poplar Forest, the entire building, so one section is a bedroom, another section is a study, still another section is a dining area, and they're all cut within that um, octa- octagonal area. And later on, in the 1950s, there was an there was other there were more there was another movement like this, but um, this federal style is something pretty unique, and so um, if this were gone, if this were taken away, we wouldn't have this. We wouldn't um, be able to see how these features were created, produced. If you go down to Williamsburg, they show joinery, uh, and so they would have a a way of doing this that would not be able to be reproduced or would be difficult. Over in the Point of Honor, um, we have a a patio area that's very similar to others, but still not the same. And so we have an intrinsic value. Um, Second point is artifacts. And so that goes with our next point. And so when you tear down an old building, you never know what is being destroyed. Um, Liberty University has Mead's Tavern. And Mead's Tavern was, of course, an old tavern in the 1700s uh, during the American Revolution that is still producing artifacts. So what they would do is when something broke, they just throw it in the basement. This also is true for Poplar Forest, if you look. But here we have a on the immediate end we have a button, um, then a coin that's 1798, and that taverns aren't the only things. So I have a friend who lives in an old farmhouse, the Woodson farm, and we can see the bayonet over there. And the bayonet is just one of the things that this gentleman finds all the time, and it's a continual, uh, gold mine of artifacts and treasures and things that would never be normally found and could be lost to time. New businesses prefer old buildings. So, um, going off of what was said in The Death and Life of a Great American Cities by Jane Jacobs in the 1960s, um, they're tried and true. So, old buildings, they've been around. There's, they won't fall down. They won't get uh, torn down by storms. They won't be torn down by uh, natural uh, natural disasters if they're maintained. And if they're maintained, then these buildings can last a long time. So it's multifaceted. So there was the idea in older buildings is that it wasn't just a space for one particular area. It was a space for everything. So a tavern could also you take out the chairs and tables, and there it could be a dance floor or a meeting hall. Um, Williamsburg has a similar meeting hall um, in which the beginnings of the Declaration of Independence were debated. They're covered. So we're going to talk about this a little later, but um, old buildings can be covered by the government. Um, there's a process to get them uh, looked after and maintained, or money for that, and they're coveted. So old buildings, they look beautiful, they attract the eye, and that's what we're going for. Uh, Next is old buildings attract people. Architecture we've shown. Familiarity. Well, if you see a building enough, if you see something enough, then it is familiar to you, and you like to go there over and over and over and over and over. It's just familiarity attracts people. They like to have their old hangouts, as as you might say. Uniqueness at the same time. They're not just familiar; they're also unique, like the octagonal architecture that we saw in Point of Honor and in Poplar Forest. Old buildings are reminders of a city's culture and complexity. So over here where I live in Lynchburg, we have the Craddock-Terry Hotel. And the Craddock-Terry Hotel was of course, why it has a shoe on it is that it has used to be a shoe factory, and they modified it into a hotel, and they keep modifying it, and they keep reusing the space. Again, it's versatile. Over in the center, we have the a old retreat for a writer in Lynchburg. Then, of course, we have a picture of the St. Paul's Cathedral. Um, in every city, churches are similar, but they're different, and so they show the city's culture, the architecture, the um, and plus they are modified over time in a vernacular. So each of these Each of these buildings are similar but different. They are they have a certain feel, which is the same thing for the place that I used to live in LA. So over on um, in the center, we have the hotel, and we see, of course, the Art Nouveau, um, Art Deco style, and uh, this is something that is fairly unique to Los Angeles. And over on the other building was something that my grandfather uh, worked in. He had a catering business, and so he worked in this building, and it's a revival of that style. Uh, and so each building and each area of a town gives its own culture, its own unique, its own complexity. One is a hotel like Caracteri. One is a retreat for a writer. One is um, a church, a meeting place, and then there's business uh, cafes and up over in the upper area of the CBRE building, um, we would have businesses. So regret only goes one way. Once it's gone, it's gone. Uh, there's an old song uh, that you may or may not remember. Um, you put uh, you pave paradise, put in a parking lot. So once it's gone, it's gone, and you may not ever be able to get that back. Sometimes you might find a an artifact. Sometimes you might not. In my case, uh, if that if the CBR RE building would have been destroyed, then a piece of my own history would have been lost. Um, my own grandfather, be having worked in that building, I would never have that piece of history. So, what we do about it is in the National Register of uh, Historic Places. Of course, the government sends out certain people, and they look at the building. They say, okay, uh, and they decide to put on uh, the registry or not, give money to the upkeep or not. And they do this by the level of significance, of course. How famous is the building? Physical condition, it has to be in good condition. Proposed use. Well, what is the building used for? If it's simply just being used for a meeting house or youth group, it might not be considered there. And then of course building codes. Building codes have to be looked at, and sometimes you can fix up a old building. Um, Lynchburg Historical Preservation Commission, which is the local version of the National Register, really. And many older cities have their own preservation commission. They look at, they bring people in, um, and they look at the different um, they look at uh, well, what can we do to fix up this old building? Um, the Lynchburg Preservation Commission had a meeting just this last December where they looked at an old building and they said, well, we can, this needs fixing. Let's look. What is a window we can use or a door we can use? The building was quite old and quite run down, and different states have different ideas of physical condition. Over in California, a rundown building may not necessarily be uh, apt for preservation, while in Virginia, a rundown building may just be a work in progress. Um, so each state decides which is what they really want to have. And so that is the end of our presentation. So all buildings have intrinsic value. You never know what's being destroyed, what can be saved, what cannot be saved, what is a part of history. New businesses prefer old buildings. They don't want to they don't want to pay necessarily for new buildings. Old buildings attract people. They do. They're unique. They're familiar. Um, they have excellent architecture. Old buildings are a reminder of city's culture and complexity. Um, each city has its own culture uh, and its own timeline, and no two cities are alike, no two areas are alike, no two buildings are really alike. And once it's gone, it's gone. And we cannot, uh, we may not be able to bring it back. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.